Welcome back to another episode of the Bear Trap on the Boomer Bust channel, a Bears podcast by a Bears fan. I'm your host Terry, and today, 500 episodes of Bear Trap. Man, what a sad one to end up on for 500. But nevertheless, we're here. We got to talk about what's going on. I know there are some people that have been asking about the draft stuff. I think I honestly feel like what I said in the community pretty much sums up. I don't know that I have a lot more to say. On top of that, I've been sick like last week, and then just other stuff taking priority. I don't know, for those who've been listening, I don't know if you noticed this, but I just noticed this year, early May, I've been getting sick every year for like the last 4 years, maybe, back to 2021, because that's when I first got COVID, was early May, and I've been getting sick around that time every year since. So we'll see if we could disrupt that pattern for next year. But either way, I was mostly resting and stuff like that, so I just didn't have time to get to it. And I didn't feel super strong about it. And I'm going to repeat what I said before, but I feel like our roster is mostly returners, and so we'll be fine. I don't know what's going on. There's a bunch of kids yelling outside, so I don't know if y'all can hear that, but hopefully not. Anyway, so we got a large returning roster. And even with our number one pick with Loveland, we know, obviously you could use 2 tight ends, but we have a starting tight end. And so even with that, I don't feel like there's a lot to discuss. And the biggest thing is we have no clue what Ben Johnson's offense is going to look like. A lot of people ask that every year, no matter what the coach is, and I keep telling you, we don't know until we know, especially when this is a new position. It'd be one thing if he came over to be the offensive coordinator. Then you might have a little bit more of an idea, because we would know based on the head coach what they want to do. But this is the first time he gets to call all the shots, so we don't know what offense Ben wants to run. Plus, he already said he's going to change it all from the ground up. And if you take him at that word, we don't know what it's going to look like. And even if it was like, hey, we're bringing the exact same offense, it's not going to work the same because we got different players. So we just got to wait and see. It's hard for me to tell you how everything plugs in. But really, that's not important. The type of player that is. And that's about it. Like I told you, my comparison was Kyle Pitts. Everybody tell you this is a big receiver type of tight end. If you want to think Dalton Kincaid as well, but I think I know he's bigger and stronger than Dalton Kincaid, can block better, so he's more versatile. So there's that. And then I keep getting these guys mixed up. Is it Stewart? Which one did we get? It's a Stewart and a Turner. Anyway, our defensive tackle, he's going to be in. We brought in Grady Jarrett, who is at the end of his rope, but the D-line in the NFL and college right now is all rotations, even more than it's ever been. So he'll just be in the rotation. If he can crack his potential, then potentially you'll see him be more of a starter, but I think he'll start off in the rotation with Billings and Jarrett, and then of course Dexter. Now that's going to be interesting what they choose to do, because you paid Jarrett, so he's going to be out there. Now with Dexter having a big year last year, are they going to appease him and let him get the first snaps, or are they going to let Billings out there? And then I know some people talk about the even eye fronts. It don't really matter. We're going to be a nickel most of the time. So I'll be curious how they end up rotating those guys. And then the rest of them, again, we got a lot of returners, so it's not a lot going on. You got the corner out of San Antonio, I want to say, which I knew I recognized him. You know what it was? I played NCAA with that team. And he was my starting quarterback or cornerback, excuse me, obviously. And so I was like, oh, I remember that name. And it's funny because that used to happen a lot back when, NCAA was a thing. I even met some guys on spring break back when I was in college that I was playing with on Dynasty. And I was like, oh my God, like, it's y'all from Southern Miss or whatever. And so those things happen now that we got NCAA back. But anyway, so I thought I recognized him, but very much in the mold of a Tariq Woolen in terms of a lot of physical tools. I don't think he's as smooth as an athlete. I'm not saying he's going to come in and start, but similar reasons we got Tyreek Stevenson. Not saying they're the same type player, but similar reasons. You take the physical traits and you kind of lean into it. So we'll see how he adjusts. He's a lower round pick. If he adjusts fast, I think Tyreek Stevenson's job is totally up for grabs. Unless the staff just loved him on film. I think after what he did last year on film and in terms of just, as a player in the locker room, I would guess he's on thin ice, but I don't know for sure. So, will Frazier get a chance to really try to get out? I don't know. And then the tackle, I think just more competition. Obviously, a lot of these picks have connection with Ryan Poles through some way or another. But so we got the Boston College connection, of course. And I do think Amagaji, number one, didn't show enough to make you feel like, okay, we're safe. Obviously, Braxton and Darnell didn't either. So we bring in that competition. We put money in the interior line, so that's more or less fortified. But then at that tackle spot, just adding more competition to see who rises to the top. Now, look, there's evidence all over the league where you have lower round talent or smaller school talent rise to the occasion. That doesn't mean it's always the case. So I could understand if some fans look at Ryan Poles like, can we stop with, I wouldn't say these reaches, but can we stop trying to use fourth round or, should have been third round type guys or smaller school guys. Not Darnell Wright. He had true SEC experience, but I could see someone saying that. But it's not 100% a bad approach. But I can see how somebody like, man, I just kind of want one of these blue chip guys. I want like a Will Campbell. I don't know. I don't think one way is right or the other. I am partial to Big Ten tackles, to be honest with you. But SEC, they're good too. So anyway, and then everybody else, I think they're just filling out the roster. I don't think there's any spots that are wide open. We got a linebacker. There's no way he's taking snaps from any of our guys. And I believe we still have Sanborn. If we do, I don't think he's taking snaps from him. But if we don't, then might be a spot there in base for him to compete for, but definitely more or less special teams. Running back's going to have to do some special teams, but running back can always get carries as well. And then we had another interior lineman who I don't really think is going to start. So I hope that's enough. I'm sorry. I know people were asking for it, but I don't think there's a large conversation about the draft class, to be honest with you. I think the bigger conversation is about what the offense is going to look like, what the defense is going to look like, more or less, because it's mostly the same starter. So not super worried about that unless Dennis Allen just does something completely different. So it's all really on the offense and Caleb Williams. So speaking of Caleb Williams, so let me give you a little insight when we do things like this, whether it's sports or other social things. So I started to see this pop up yesterday. And I was running around yesterday, so I wasn't able to sit down and immediately do an episode, which I didn't want to do anyway, because I'm like, I see a lot of definitive statements. I'm like, where's this coming from? So as I've said with many things, what's the source? So first question is, where's this coming from? So by the time we get to last night, everybody has a video, a segment, article. So I was like, okay, I got other stuff to do, but tomorrow I'm gonna take some time to do my research before I start talking about this, because this does not seem, I guess here's what I say. I knew it was from a book, but I didn't know anything else, because if you just get some news like that, and again, I always tell you, think of the claim, think of the evidence. That's how we typically do things in the world of academia. So the claim was Caleb didn't want to go to Chicago. Okay. Caleb was going to blow up the draft. Caleb was going to do this. Okay. So my first thought is Caleb did not just come out and say this. Why would he? And if he did, there would have been some video, some audio, whatever. Okay. So this isn't a primary source. Obviously, I heard it was a book. Even if it's a book, that could be a primary source because it could have been an interview. So I was like, okay, this is not coming straight from Caleb. This is coming through a book. And then I was like, okay, let me research it. So today I went through and I used reputable sources, NY Times, NFL.com actually was the first one I read, because it blows my mind that NFL.com even put this out there, but still it was out there, I guess. So NFL.com is the first one. Obviously, it's their league. They're not going to put out some unverified. New York Times, stuff like that. People with reputable reputations. Anyway, not just, random places or smaller places. So once I seen that, I was like, okay, this is legit. So Seth Wickersham, I know his name and whatever. So it's coming from his book. The book is not out yet. People have not read the book. And I read a bunch of other articles or videos too, after I looked at the, reputable ones. Everybody's using the same quotes. So I'm like, okay, so these are excerpts from the book that were released, because the book is coming out in the fall. So this is publication, this is marketing, trying to get some set pre-sales for the book. So I was like, okay, so none of y'all read the book. Even in what is being said, it does not clearly state where this information came from. Some of it says according to Caleb's confidants, and then some says according to Caleb's father. Now, for the way I read it, I was not able to determine, is this something that was, again, an interview where he's telling Seth Wickersham, the author, directly, hey, this is what I feel, blah, blah, blah. Is this secondhand information? People close to him said this. Especially when it says comes from Caleb, nothing seems direct. It's either coming from his dad or from someone else. So without that information, if that gets cleared up, that would help. Without that information, I don't have a clear picture, but I will say there's enough here to feel like there's some legitimacy. And I'll be honest, I'm not 100% on board of like, this is definitively true, but I'm more in the 70%, like it's more than likely the essence of this is true. Now, the exact quotes, the exact actions, the exact timeline, I don't know. Even once I read the chapter, I still might not come away feeling 100% convinced, but that would give me more of a picture of what the author is trying to claim. As of right now, we just have little excerpts. So, let me go over kind of what's being said, and then I'll kind of go over my thoughts. All right. So as I said prior, in a nutshell, Caleb Williams didn't want to go to Chicago or to our Bears. And so out of that kind of conclusion, there became this process of trying to figure out what are the ways that they can circumvent going to Chicago. Now, this is a little bit of what we heard, and I believe it was Colin Cowherd who like flip-flopped. Somebody flip-flopped. I can't remember exactly. I feel like it was him though, but because he's been talking about Caleb forever. So I believe this is very in line with Colin Cowherd said, that they don't want to go to Chicago. They're going to do what they can to, get out. And then it flipped to, oh no, he wants to go to Chicago. So that's another piece of evidence. Again, whether it's this or all these trials, you got to look at the bigger picture. So to me, I'm like, oh, okay. Now, we ain't talking about right now when it's a hot story. We're talking about back then. He said this, and it lines up with what's being said now. Okay, so they claim that Caleb, and from what I gather, mostly his dad, but again, we gotta wait to read the chapter to get the full picture. We'll just say Caleb's team tried to find a way to get to another team because he felt like the reputation of Chicago wasn't good. Quarterbacks go to die there. I guess from what I read, because again, some people pick and choose parts of the quote, after kind of a meeting with Shane Waldron, he felt like he felt like he couldn't mesh with him well enough to get it done or to work out. I don't believe it's Shane Waldron, like he had this reputation, as some people try to make it seem, that it was so obvious that Shane Waldron was a horrible coordinator. That's not really the case. That's not the truth, and that's not what happened here. But he did work with him, and he felt like it didn't mesh well. Okay? He met with Kevin O'Connell in Minnesota, and he felt like, I really want to go there. He's going to give me what I need. So he was pushing to get to the Vikings. So they were like, okay, let's tell Chicago we don't want to go there. Let's look at the CBA and see if there's a way we can circumvent. Now, people were bringing up the rookie scale, which has really nothing to do with Chicago. That's just kind of thrown in with all these other quotes as far as the CBA. But I think the other part of the CBA was like, what are the rules in terms of the draft? So they were talking about going to the USFL or one of these spring leagues instead of going to the NFL, suing the league, all types of stuff. Again, we don't know the finer details till we get to the book, but that's some of the stuff that was being thrown out there. Then eventually he had his top 30 visit or whatever with Chicago in Chicago, and he left feeling like, first of all, they also mentioned Ryan Poles said that we're drafting you no matter what you say. And Caleb had his top 30 visit, and after that's when he was like, I feel like I could do it here. And that lines up with Colin Cowherd and talking about how Caleb was down to go to Chicago. So that's in a nutshell. I'm sure there's a little bit of pieces here and there out there about stuff. So how do I feel about this? It's not a good look. I will say this though at the top. And I'm kind of processing real time, but I do truly believe that if Caleb wins, the rest of that won't matter. And to be honest, the more I think about it, there's been situations with players that said things or that people in the building knew that they didn't want to be there or they didn't like the city, whatever, but they did their job and it worked out. Now, every person's different, can't speak for every person, but as I'm getting up there in age, and I'm sure people who listen to this who are older, you've seen a lot of players get to their college career and their NFL career, and we see what they're doing. Bears have a strong alumni. Like Spice, we know, most of us know Spice. I met him a few times, root to the good bros. And he's very connected with Chicago. His son goes to Stevenson, Chicagoland area. He's connected with the city. He's connected with the team. I just saw Matt Forte post about him celebrating the anniversary and all these things. And these, like, you got to stop and think about it. Spice was from the Detroit area. He went to Penn State. He ain't got no Chicago connects. Forte went to Tulane down in New Orleans. And so the experience of being with the team in the city, when you do good things, they embrace you. And a lot of athletes tend to embrace the city back. Again, not speaking for everybody. Some people go back home and that's what, they are. But they still have heavy allegiance to the team. So if Caleb was to do what he was supposed to do and what he wants to do, I don't think there'll be any issues with Caleb in Chicago, and I don't think Caleb will have any issues with the city. So I want to say that first and foremost. But it's not a good look. It's not a good look, especially right now, because we're going to be in the off season. We're going to be in a dead season pretty soon. For people that don't really watch NBA, you probably already in the dead season. And so in the dead season, it's nothing but people trying to find stuff to talk about. And so once OTAs start, once all that gets going, they're only going to ask him about that. And there's a lot of fans that are going to look at this and take the wrong way. Or I won't say the wrong way, but they'll take it in a negative way. And for me, it's negative to me. It is. And I have to understand and recognize that I was someone that was kind of praising Caleb for his out of the box thinking in terms of, and we're starting to see it now, in terms of these NIL athletes. If you listen to the actual professionals, they're telling us the NIL has been a net positive for everybody in the NFL. That a lot of these players are coming in a lot more prepared. And that's GMs, some coaches. Have there been some coaches that are like, these players aren't used to tough coaching? Yes, but like I said, everybody seems to think it's a net positive. Now, that part of the game, I'm not there for, so you got to take their word for it. But they seem to believe that these players are coming in a lot more prepared to handle the business aspect. And Caleb, obviously, one of the forefront names of that. And so I praised him because I'm big with the unions. I'm big with representation and all that. And so I've been criticizing the NFL PA for forever, and with the new leadership, they're starting to take positive spins, but you always want to have some players to push it forward. And it's always interesting how people want to react to certain things. And my example to that is, you get a LeBron James, which mostly is praised. LeBron pushes it this way. He pushes it that way. He's innovative this way. He's pushing the players forward. But in a different sport or in the same sport with a different player, people react different. So Caleb's very negative. Whereas I'm like, hey, that's cool to have somebody that is willing to look at this in a different way and not just be like, hey, I'm a player, I'm a robot, football is all I know. Like, I like players that can help the league agenda and the player agenda. So I felt like, hey, if he becomes a superstar, that'd be cool. And I still feel that way for the most part. But to hear that he was trying to use that type of drive to fix the draft, or not fix the draft, but at least changed the draft so he didn't have to go to Chicago. That rubs me the wrong way. I forgot to mention he allegedly went to talk to Arch Manning to see basically what he was doing with Eli and all that. They also mentioned, how did I forget the biggest one, that they were thinking about putting out, basically talking crap about the city and the team publicly so that it would make it awkward and Chicago wouldn't be able to pick them. And he said he wasn't ready to nuke the city and all that. Now look, at the end of the day, for me, I am a Bears fan because that's the hometown. You know what I mean? I get it. Now I've been around the world. There's many ways that people get connected to a fandom. There's Bears fans that have never touched foot in Chicago. There's Bears fans that have never touched foot in America. That's cool. That's respectable. Look, I love the Bears fans. But my fandom in sports is very much tied to the city, to the location, to the geography. I said very vocally when they were talking about moving to Arlington Heights, and they still might. I'm against that. I don't, there's so many, and I get it. It's not that your argument's not fair, but there's so many discussions about it, and that's cool, but I'm never going to agree with you. Like, that's your life experience. Mine's is different. So I'm Chicago all day. You know what I mean? I'm a Chicago win till we blow like Chicago win. So I take great offense to somebody you've never been in Chicago, and then to try to, I wouldn't say try because he obviously didn't, but to think that you're going to disrespect the fan base, disrespect the team, disrespect the city, this great city, you gonna disrespect us just because you don't want to play there? That rubs me the wrong way. Now, with that being said, I understand the football side of it. I understand the football side of it in terms of, Chicago don't got a good track record, whatever. Obviously, I deal with those narratives all day, every day. I fight against those narratives, so I don't agree with Caleb. But from the outside looking in, I can understand that's how somebody felt. Now, you meet with Waldron and everything, and it's not a good fit, then even more I understand. Because we're not talking about, in 1980, blah, 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 this coach did this, so I can't win here. What are you talking about? All these fans. That has nothing to do with right now. But you sit down with the current coach and you're like, it's not working for me. Okay, I understand even more. To try to blow up a draft over a team's history is very weak to me, especially when it's not the same consistent ownership. And especially if it's a team where the ownership isn't super invasive into the process. Like, if we want to talk about the Cowboys, I get it. But other than that, most teams, I'm not going off the history of the team. There's plenty of players or fans, there's plenty of sports media people that do that. The history of this team is this, so they got to draft a linebacker. It's so dumb. That's stupid. It does not matter. Only thing that matters are the decision makers at the time. So, again, I understand to a certain extent. I don't agree with them, but I understand from the outside looking in, saying, hey, this is not a good situation for a quarterback. Now, obviously we didn't get Rome Odunze yet, but way the roster was looking, because we drafted Caleb and then we got Odunze. But before that, we already had DJ. He had been there for a year. We had already got Keenan Allen. We had already got Swift for whatever that's worth, and we were already a pretty good running team. The offensive line was still definitely a question. I'm trying to think, because obviously we had Darnell Wright. I'm trying to think, did we add anybody? Nate Davis, Jenkins was coming back. I guess we didn't add anybody, and then Coleman Shelton was a question mark. So you could look at the offensive line for sure and be like, yeah, I don't know. But for the most part, the defense was returning again, and they were trending upwards. And we added some new weapons to the offense. And then obviously we got Odunze. And so now we all remember going into the league or to the season, everybody's like, this is one of the best situations in the league. One of the best situations for a rookie quarterback ever. So outside of the offensive line, I feel like if you look at that situation, you say, okay, I wouldn't say this is a terrible situation for a quarterback. I'd say it's pretty good. Now you met the coach, you don't like the vibe. I get that. That's part of it too. So, I'll call all that a wash. But, so that's the football side. But in terms of just the type of person and player you are, to think that you was trying to do all that, it rubs me the wrong way. It really does. And we already know kind of what the discussion was about Caleb Williams. We know about his personality, blah, blah, blah. I don't know the man, never met the man. But I will say, stuff like this is what people are afraid of. Stuff like this is what some people, some players, some teams, some owners, some GMs don't like. Players with different personalities that aren't the cookie cutter face of the franchise, which tangentially, I have to throw this in there, for all the people crying about Shedeur, guess what? Caleb didn't have no issues. You know why? Because Caleb has a lot of talent. So anyway, this not type player that people want, especially if they don't have number one pick talent. So that all coming to light doesn't feel great. Now we couple that with what we had last year. He's a Bear. He's our quarterback. We went through his rookie year. We saw him in Hard Knocks. We've seen him kind of, I guess, grow over the last year. So he's not going nowhere, of course. But am I going to look at him differently? Yes, I think I am. And I'm usually not like that, but I really think I am. Now, like I said in the beginning, if he wins, that's all that's going to matter. But I'm going to look at him different, man. And how he handles the questions are going to matter. But we pretty much all know how he's going to handle it. He's going to, like, Caleb has never really been bad at handling the media. He's been almost too cookie cutter. So I don't really see him messing up. And no matter what he says, he gets to fall back on the excuse, we got Ben Johnson now, so we're moving forward. And I feel so many things from this story. Again, we'll get the full, picture, hopefully more once the book comes out. But it doesn't feel good. It rubs me the wrong way. I don't like that this was even a discussion. Like the idea that some people are floating, hey, we should praise him for deciding to go to Chicago. We should praise him for deciding not to blow it up. Now, look, as I said, Caleb is a different level of prospect than Shedeur. Still, if we're going to sit here and talk about how we don't feel like this needs to be an entitlement where you are picking where you go. That's not the NFL. That's not the draft. And I wasn't, I was a little kid and I wasn't following the league when Eli did his thing. But I know it happened, and I'm still not a fan of that. I forgot other quarterbacks that did. I want to say Marino, somebody did it in the Elway draft, I think. But either way, I'm not a fan of that either. So the idea, there's bias against Shador. No, like for me, I don't really care the talent level. I don't really care the reason necessarily. Like, you don't get to dictate the draft. And yes, where you go matters. And this might just be the bias because it's our team. But first of all, we weren't the worst team in the league. Like, what are we talking about? We had the Panthers pick. I ain't saying we was great, but we weren't the worst team in the league. And I'm offended. I'm offended that you would think we're the dumpster fire where you just can't go there, especially when you don't even know us. So that rubs me the wrong way. What does it say about going forward? I honestly don't know that it says anything new. Quarterbacks in general, or players in general, they always want to mesh with their coach. They always want somebody that's going to get them better. Now, you do get situations, and I think probably the most popular one is Aaron Rodgers and Nathaniel Hackett. But you get situations where a coach just hits it off really well with a player, and even that coach might not be that great. And we're not talking about just coordinators and head coaches, because that's people who seem to only think about. I've said this before. You got coaches coaching positions they never even played. As I told you, what was Ben Johnson when he came to Detroit? Or not came to Detroit, but when he got promoted in Detroit when what's his name? Dan Campbell took over. He's the tight ends coach. Did Ben Johnson play tight end? No, he did not. So a lot of that happens in the league. And so you might end up with a position coach, an assistant coach, or whatever that you hit it off with, but they really can't do much for you other than communicate the game plan, but they're not making you better at your position, but you hit it off with them. And the same is true vice versa. There might be coaches that are great at what they do. They help get you better, but you might hate them and you don't listen. It just depends on the player. But I say all that to say it's not unique to me that Caleb Williams was like, I want to go to the Vikings because Kevin O'Connell seems to know what he's doing. Now, we could talk about them being in our division. We could talk about a lot of things. I think fans like to look at it from the outside and they forget that these players are on the inside. This isn't look at your resume and blah, blah, blah. No, like they're sitting down, they're going through it. There's an actual connection and there's actual information of like, okay, this coach laid this out for me. Now, again, I don't speak on coaches too heavily because I'm not there. To my point, fans like to talk a lot from the outside. That's not how football works. I'm not on the inside, so I can't speak to it. But do I know there's better coaches than others? Absolutely. Is it based on a quote-unquote resume? No, it's not. But there are better coaches. And so if Caleb felt like, man, this coach is really going to help propel my career, I don't really think that's a new age thing. I don't think that's a quarterback thing. I don't think that's a diva thing. I think that's how players always are. That's how they are in high school all the way up. I mean, high school, you could be a little more of a, we tell you what to do, but still, for the most part, players want to be coached up well, especially when it gets to the professional league. So I think I'm not really mad at that. I'm not really mad at that. The Vikings is a choice, but hey, KOC is a great coach from what we know. And so I could understand. That's like That's like somebody who's it? Ken Ward. So that's like Ken Ward saying, "Hey, I sat down with Sean McVay and I would really love to play for him in the Rams." Of course. That's not a crazy statement. So that part I'm not too mad at or worked up about. But yeah, so that doesn't shock me. That is what it is. So does any of this say anything about us going forward? I think the obvious is already on the wall. The leadership of the Bears went with the popular sports media fan take. We need a young offensive coach, head coach. We need a quarterback coach to be our head coach. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. So we went with that. Caleb was excited, obviously because he's seen what Detroit did up close. From what I understand, after his conversations and everything, he's meshing well, and he feels more confident in the offense's ability under Johnson, and that's what everybody was expecting. To build a bubble that's comfortable for Caleb Williams. So again, that's why I say once they get to the questions, it's still important how he answers, but he's got an easy layup right there. All he has to say is we moving forward with Ben Johnson. And so, I've said many times, and nothing has changed. The way that people wanted to evaluate things and blame things was complete BS, including Shane Waldron. Yes, I'll still sit here today. Am I saying, hey, I want us to have this staff or this person? I'm not saying that, but at the end of the day, as I've said before, this is what I do for a living. And football is also something that I have a lot of experience in. So when you're talking about evaluation and making conclusions, this is what I do for a living. I see it day in and day out. People making wrong conclusions based off the available information. And that's exactly what happened with the Bears. And that's why you saw, okay, it's this person's fault. Oh, it's still bad. Oh, it's this person's fault. Oh, it's still bad. Oh, it's this person's fault. Oh, it's still bad. So I think that was complete BS. I think the decision to go with Ben Johnson just because he's a quarterback coach was complete BS. But we'll see how everything rocks going forward. It is a clean slate to a certain extent. There's definitely nothing guaranteed in my eyes, especially after last year. With the schedule we had, with the roster we had, yeah, man, I nothing's guaranteed. Nothing's guaranteed. And everybody guaranteeing things because of Ben Johnson, who's never been a head coach, that's hilarious to me. So we will see what it looks like, but pretty ugly. Not I wouldn't say ugly, just an uncomfortable situation right now. But I'm very curious to what y'all think. I already know it's pretty much going to be the ones who didn't like Caleb and didn't want him and wanted Justin Fields. They're going to turn around and be like, see, he's a diva, blah, blah, blah. The ones that were down and defending Caleb because they had to online, they're going to be like, he's our quarterback, we're moving forward. And I think most people are probably going to be like, yeah, that sucks, but he's our quarterback, what are you going to do? And that's just kind of what I fall into. But I'm curious to what y'all think. So go to the comment section, let me know, share it around, get the convo started. Thumbs up, subscribe, and remember, stay up and bear down.